According to a report in the Australian, Pat Cummins and the Australian team are worried for their families' safety. They've asked for extra protection for their families in Leeds ahead of the third test match. The verbal abuse directed at the Australian team during the second test at Lord's was so intense that Steve Smith's mother had to leave the ground while the young son of a staffer was reduced to tears. This is all part of that report in the Australian. Smith's mother, Gillian, who was at the Lord's Test with his father Peter, had to leave the ground early after being taunted by fans, according to this report. The spectators did not know her connection to the former Test skipper and targeted her due to her nationality. The publication also reported, adding that the 11-year-old son of an Australian team staff member cried after being subjected to abuse. Australian players later huddled around the youngster on the balcony at the home of cricket as a show of support. So, as a result of all the abuse, heckling at Lord's, be it at the ground or in the long room, the team has asked for extra protection for their loved ones when the sides next meet at Headingley. Now, Jamie, in the press conference, Joe Root said that, look, you should support your nation, but at the end of the day, don't cross the line. So he wants to shift the focus back on cricket. But having said that, do you think the focus will be on cricket?
Let's hope. Let's hope, right? I saw the Joe Root comment, which you're referring to. He said, come, please support us, but it shouldn't go beyond supporting your nation. I think we've already addressed the issue of the hostility that people are expecting, which is why security has been beefed up at Headingley. Let's just hope it doesn't spill over, because this is a fascinating Test series. Some mediocre cricket from England, much better cricket from Australia, some tactical decisions from both teams which have been questioned. And like we discussed yesterday, Headingley is such a vibrant, it can be such a fantastic place to host Test cricket. It's one of the few venues across the world where you'll get a packed crowd whenever England plays a Test match there. But let's just hope the focus stays on cricket. And I think something like this is going to be good for the England team, because we've discussed this many times, why they're down 2-0 and not up 2-0. If they can use this to galvanize, like Brendan McCullum said, we could be looking at another. And just because it's Headingley, which has given such magical, mythical Test matches down the years, we could be in for maybe the best Test match of this whole series. But let's hope it stays civil.
Yeah, okay. Now let's also put up the quote of Australian captain Pat Cummins for all of you. Pat Cummins has spoken about that incident. The one thing is that Pat Cummins has stood his ground. He has remained adamant. He says, for what I think is a pretty common non-event, it does seem like everybody has a pretty strong opinion about it. I'm a bit surprised about how big it's been, but that's the Ashes. The littlest thing tends to be the moment where everyone likes to show their patriotism. I don't think a conversation about the spirit of cricket even comes into a dismissal like that. It was a plain and simple stumping. Everyone that has played cricket and knows cricket, you just see it as that. End of story. I don't think there's any discussion. It's out. If the shoe was on the other foot, I wouldn't be looking at the opposition. I'd probably be looking at our own batter and would be thinking it's pretty silly. So exactly what you were saying, Vedam, earlier on, I think it was yesterday, where you said that I'm surprised that nobody from English cricket's actually talking about Johnny Bairstow and how dozy he was. I mean, they've talked about it, but they've ultimately blamed Australia for what happened. Nobody is really seeing this as Johnny Bairstow's fault. But there are so many interesting things now, just moving slightly away from the controversy, because we are going to see some great cricketing action. Steve Smith's 100 Test match. Ricky Ponting's already called him the second greatest ever after Sir Don Bradman. So a lot of other things now. It is time to shift focus back to cricket. What are you excited about when you think of the third Test?
First and foremost, sport has become far too jingoistic. It doesn't matter where they're playing, whether it's in England or Australia or Pakistan or India. It's just become too jingoistic. And whether it's football, it's cricket, and we're seeing this again and again and again. And somebody has to cool tempers down. And I think the captains and the team management have a responsibility towards it. Just saying that it's a war by another name, I mean, doesn't hold water at all. And as far as what I'm really like to see, I like to see a spicy wicket.
Mm.
The Englishmen don't want to give a spicy wicket because they know the Australian fast bowlers are much quicker, bigger, taller, and maybe even better under
Mm.
those circumstances. And that's why they don't want to give a spicy wicket. But now that England has brought in two new fast bowlers, and both
Mm.
of them are outstanding fast bowlers, the issue again was. I think the term that Anderson used was kryptonic
Yeah.
pitches. Yeah, something like that. So, I mean, those were like that. They were flat pitches. And Anderson was of no use. Anderson, maybe on a green top, would have been very useful, but they're scared to give that kind of a green top because the Aussies could use it much, much better.